right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're excited to welcome you to this session on achieving operational excellence by harmonizing security and operations, a topic that continues to challenge organizations across all industries. Today, we'll hear from a true leader in this space, Nemi George, VP, Information Security Officer, and IT Service Operations at Pacific Dental Services Health. Nemi will be showing how his team tackled the age-old dilemma of balancing robust security with the need to keep operations running smoothly. Through his leadership and their adoption of Remedio, Pacific Dental transformed their approach to endpoint security and operational efficiency, from reducing their attack surface by 15% to streamlining configuration management by up to 90%, and even enhancing cross-departmental collaboration. This is a story of true transformation, and you'll get real-world insights, including how they responded to threats like Log4j and SMB version 1, and learn how technology helped shift their organization from that reactive stance to a proactive security posture, all while enabling continuous improvement. We've got quite a bit to get into, so let's get going. I'm David Rummage, Strategic Account Manager here at Remedio. We specialize in secure endpoint configuration and proactive, non-disruptive remediation to help organizations maintain policy compliance and strengthen operational resilience. Nemi, it's great to have you here. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your work at PDS Health?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, David. So, Nemi George, as David mentioned, I'm responsible for security, infrastructure, operations at PDS Health.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the challenges of leading both security and IT efforts within an organization.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. First of all, some people don't think anyone should have both of those jobs. I tend to agree. Throw in infrastructure, and yes, you have very little sleep and lose a lot of hair. But it's a good counterbalance. I think that's the way that I look at it. Because a lot of times the security approach for years has been one of control, right? One of almost getting in the way, one of enforcing controls and putting in agents, doing a bunch of things that in a lot of cases has significant operational impact on the way organizations work. And when you run operations as well, it gives you that sort of moment to pause before you run off and start implementing a bunch of security controls. Because if you implement a control poorly, or the controls you implement impact performance and operations, your operations team, they're getting calls, they're getting blown out of the water, they're the ones who are getting sucked into endless escalations and so on. So you've always got to look at both sides of the equation and make sure that when you are implementing whatever control, whatever framework, whatever tool, that you do it in a way that does not adversely impact the way your business operates. Because ultimately, your business needs to operate, right? The business doesn't exist to simply be secure for the sake of it. So, anyway, it's a good balance, but I do enjoy that we take full responsibility for making sure the business goes forward, but also making sure we do it safely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you in this dual role have a unique, challenge of kind of weighing the consequences between inaction, which could potentially lead to security risks, potentially breaches, and ultimately business disruption, which, as you made the point of saying, right, the reason the business is there to operate. But simultaneously, the other side of it is uninformed action could lead to potential consequences, and again, business disruption.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely, and it's kind of just to echo that point, David. It's ultimately the fear that people always have is that you're going to break something. Well, you're going to break something regardless if you just kind of run blindly. And so, what folks in my position have been looking for years is, hey, we have to make decisions. We want to be informed. We want to make risk-based, risk-aware, and context-aware decisions. And as we kind of go through this webinar, we will focus on a lot of that. And that visibility, that Git pull allows us to make some of those decisions. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of touching or diving deeper into that point, right, is how do you make those decisions? And that kind of transitions into the topic of what we're showing on this slide is what's going to allow you to do that. So can you share a quick overview of your environment at PDS Health? Maybe walk us through the security stack, some of the main security challenges your team's facing.
Oh yeah. So as it relates to broadly the conversation topic we're having today, we have Tanium largely for patch vulnerability management, aspects of risk management, and essentially managing the endpoint. That includes deploying of applications, right? Not just patching, but software deployments to endpoints. We have Qualys, which we use mainly for a number of things, including configuration management, but it does vulnerability management and some aspects of, bringing together the telemetry we get from other tools, so we understand risk across our estate, and going beyond just endpoints with Qualys, we can also do infrastructure as well. We have Cortex XDR, the bottom left of your screen, and that is essentially endpoint protection. So think of next gen AV, EDR, so endpoint detection and response, the ability to detect malware, anything anomaly, any sort of anomaly on your endpoint, and the ability to respond to that. And then we have Harmonizes, which pretty much does everything we talked about there, but focuses on our medical IoT, IoTM environment. So that's kind of what we have as it relates to managing endpoints, and by endpoints I mean workstations, servers.
Sure. Well, and you kind of touched on the uniqueness of PDS Health as also has the healthcare aspect of the business, but there's a lot of familiarity in the tools that you just mentioned: vulnerability scanning, patch management, endpoint. Maybe talk a little bit about specifically why you also added Remedio to that stack.
Yeah, so a lot of the tools we have give you visibility into the assets you have. There's some commonality there. Most of them, if not all of them, do vulnerability. Tanium certainly is kind of our main tool for deploying and applying patches. But what we found missing at the time was just looking at configuration, right? And for some people, it may be worth at this point just taking the time to explain what that difference sort of is. Configuration management focuses really on maintaining a secure baseline on your endpoint. And it does that really by reviewing the configuration settings on your endpoint and applying reviewing them based on policies, which may be internal policies or external frameworks such as NIST, CIS, and so on. Whereas with vulnerability management, you're scanning for vulnerabilities which might be exploited within the environment. It could be the code base or firmware base or whatever that is. With vulnerability management, a lot of times you're then installing a patch or a hotfix, something to then correct or disable that feature or move to a version of that feature that is not susceptible to whatever that vulnerability is. And that's by and large what we've done in the security industry for a very long time. But there are several cases where you might not be able to install anything external. You might not be able to rely on the vendor providing a patch to fix or hotfix to address whatever the configuration is. You simply need to reset or change those configuration settings. So think about it like a light switch, right? The light switch is on, you want to turn it off. And in a lot of cases, that's all that's required. You may have a protocol that is no longer required. There is no hot fix for that. We just want to disable it. And we did not have the ability to do that at scale across the organization without having to do a bunch of scripting internally with mixed results. The other thing that we really wanted to do, I think this is the biggest selling point for, to your question, David, why we looked at Gitbowl, was the ability for us to do that with confidence, right? So a lot of times when the security team, we run scans and, we decide that something needs to be addressed, we then work with the various teams to the SMEs, right, the subject matter experts, to make that change. But we are almost blind to what the impact of those changes are. And so we're relying on residual knowledge in some cases to say, we can make this fix, we can make this configuration change, and we hope not to break anything. But we're never 100% sure. Using
Remedio,
we're able to now say, well, we can make that change because we can see that this protocol, this software, this setting has not been used, has not been called upon within a significant period of time. And so you can make more context-aware, informed decisions. And ultimately, that leads to less operational impact for your organization.
Yeah, that's beautiful the way you put that. Kind of positioning it from the beginning that configuration vulnerabilities are really born of technology flaws and misconfiguration of devices, and the fact that they occur at the OS level, right, rather than that design level. And the point you made is that it kind of leaves the operators on their own or without ability or without that kind of clear confidence to make decisions, right? And where they previously would have required lots of manual monitoring, that is time consuming or potentially error prone. Now you have the ability to do it at scale, which I think is the kind of key differentiator, right? Is what was previously a very long, tedious, maybe even almost unmanageable process becomes more manageable. Okay, well, if we go back to kind of the start of the conversation, we talked a little bit about like the robust security stack that you and many organizations have, but none of them really are addressing the criticality of misconfigurations and the risk that they bring. What was it that kind of triggered, for you guys to say, hey, we need to do something about the misconfiguration problem?
I think like most organizations, you can always go back to one major trigger point, and for us it was after the world woke up one morning to learn of Log4j, and we were no different. And with these things, you kind of look internally and ask the same question as I'm sure everyone else did within the organizations. Hey, where does this apply to us? Does this apply to us? What's the impact? What's the scope? What's the scale? How many devices? What do we need to do? Should we be worried about this? Because with some of the bigger events like Log4j, Imitet, and a bunch of others, we kind of heard about it as a community almost from the media, right? There was a lot of media hullabaloo about it. And you realize, at least in our case, quickly, that you don't have a lot of tools that really give you clear information as to where this configuration issues might be found within your organization. And now you are in, I won't call it a crisis mode, but certainly potential pre-crisis mode, having to send a bunch of emails to application owners and system owners to say, hey, can you tell me if your application has this code or configuration built in? Like, should we be worried about this? And that's not a place you want to be in. You want to be able to make decisions that are informed, decisions on a much quicker timeline than having to rely on emails and people coming together and holding court to essentially decide whether or not this is something we need to work on. And so we started looking around and we sort of said, yeah, we do need to have a single console